Can a fight between a husband and wife who happen to work in the same office turn into a sexual harassment case? That's the exact question the Allahabad High Court is now sitting with. A married couple, working in the same office, ends up in a workplace complaint under the POSH Act, the law meant to protect women from sexual harassment at work. But underneath it, there's a marriage falling apart, an FIR with dowry and abuse allegations, and a committee report that reads more like a marriage counseling note than a harassment finding. So today we are unpacking this case, what happened, what the internal committee found, why the High Court has hit pause, and what this means for how organizations handle personal relationships that spill into the workplace. If you're building or running internal committees, this is exactly the kind of edge case ILMS Academy's Train the Trainer POSH program trains you to handle. Let's lay out the facts plainly. A husband and wife worked in the same office. At some point their marriage started falling apart. The friction reportedly began during a trip to Hemkund Sahib. In October 2024, the wife filed a complaint under the POSH Act, saying her husband, her colleague, used foul language and made derogatory remarks about her in front of others at the office. Notably, this complaint did not mention that they were married. Then, about 2.5 months later, she also filed a criminal FIR, separately, alleging caste-based abuse, dowry demands, and physical and verbal abuse. That FIR is what confirmed publicly that they'd been married since March 2023. So you have two legal tracks running in parallel, one meant for workplace harassment, one for domestic and criminal offenses, both stemming from what looks, on the surface, like one crumbling marriage. So what did the internal committee actually decide? A few things worth noting. First, it found that marital discord existed well before the October incident, and that their colleagues already knew, informally, that the two were married. Second, it treated two specific things as harassment under the Act's residual clause, Section 2(n)(v), which covers any other unwelcome physical, verbal or non-verbal conduct of a sexual nature, the husband going through his wife's wallet without consent, reasoning that being married gave him no special right to do that at work, and a pattern of muttering and objectionable remarks. Third, and this is important, it recommended disciplinary proceedings against the husband. But it also recommended action against both of them, husband and wife, for something else entirely, failing to disclose that they were married for over a year. That's a service conduct violation, not a harassment finding, and it's part of what makes this case so tangled. This is the line that makes the case worth watching. The Allahabad High Court, hearing the husband's petition, framed the core question almost exactly like this: can proceedings that essentially arise from marital discord be dragged into the POSH Act, a law the court itself described as intended for a different purpose? For now, the court has stayed the disciplinary proceedings against the husband and asked the other side to file a counter-affidavit within 4 weeks, followed by a rejoinder. So this is very much an open question, not a final ruling. But the framing itself is significant. It's not the court saying the POSH Act doesn't apply to married colleagues, it's the court asking, at a threshold level, whether a dispute that's fundamentally about a marriage falling apart can be rooted through a statute built for something else. Before we go further, it's worth a quick refresher on what this law is actually meant to do. The POSH Act traces back to the Supreme Court's 1997 Vishakha Guidelines, issued after the Bhavri Devi case, at a time when India had no standalone law addressing sexual harassment at work. Section 2(n) defines sexual harassment broadly: unwelcome physical contact, a demand for sexual favors, sexually colored remarks, showing pornography, or, the catch-all, any other unwelcome physical, verbal or non-verbal conduct of a sexual nature. And its purpose is squarely about protecting a woman's dignity and equal access to her workplace, giving her a civil remedy that exists alongside, not instead of, criminal law. Keep that purpose in mind, because it's exactly what the Allahabad High Court is testing this case against. Here's where this gets genuinely difficult, and it's worth sitting with the committee's own reasoning for a moment. The committee wrote something like this: a marital dispute might leave someone tense or frustrated, but that doesn't give anyone the right to disrespect their spouse at the workplace. Being someone's wife, it said, doesn't mean he gets to treat her the way he might at home. On its face, that's a reasonable principle. Dignity at work shouldn't depend on what your relationship is outside it. But it doesn't fully answer the harder, threshold question the High Court is now sitting with. If the conduct is rooted entirely in a marital relationship, arguments about trust, about a wallet, about a strained personal bond, does it become workplace sexual harassment simply because it happened to occur inside office walls? That's the exact tension this case is going to test. This isn't the first time courts have had to draw a boundary around what an internal committee is actually allowed to decide. In Bibha Pandey vs. Punjab National Bank, decided by the Delhi High Court in 2020, a harassment complaint had been filed against a general manager. During the inquiry, the committee found that the parties had a prior personal relationship and that the harassment allegations themselves weren't substantiated. But the committee didn't stop there, it went on to comment on the personal conduct of both parties, essentially passing judgment on their relationship. The Delhi High Court pushed back hard on that. It held that moral policing is not the job of management or the internal committee, and IC's jurisdiction begins and ends with whether a complaint of sexual harassment is made out. Nothing about personal relationships, nothing about who was wrong in a romance or a marriage. That's a boundary the Allahabad case may end up testing all over again. At the same time, courts have shown they are equally willing to guard against the act being stretched or misused. In Anita Suresh vs. Union of India, the Delhi High Court dismissed the complainant's petition entirely and went a step further, imposing a cost of 50,000 rupees for filing a false complaint and misusing the Act's provisions. And in Union of India vs. Reema Srinivasan Iyengar, the Madras High Court made the balance explicit. The POSH Act exists to protect women's dignity at the workplace, but, in the court's own words, it cannot be allowed to be misused to harass someone with exaggerated or non-existent allegations. So the courts are walking a real tightrope here, protecting genuine complainants without letting the law become a weapon in disputes that have nothing to do with its purpose. The Allahabad case sits exactly on that fault line. So what's the practical lesson for HR and compliance teams here? A few things stand out. First, a mandatory disclosure policy for close personal relationships between colleagues, especially marriages, where there's any overlap in reporting lines or teams. Second, a real conflict of interest protocol. The committee itself noted that management could have proactively reassigned this couple to different offices. That's not a radical idea, it's basic risk management. Third, proper IC training that draws a firm line between sexual harassment and personal relationship conduct, so inquiries don't drift into commenting on people's marriages the way we saw in the Bibha Pandey case. And fourth, a pathway for HR to step in early, before a personal dispute hardens into a formal complaint filed under a statute that was never built for it. Every one of these is a muscle that gets built through proper internal committee training, which is exactly the gap the ILMS Train the Trainer POSH program is designed to close. So where does this leave us? Right now, the Allahabad High Court has only asked the question, it hasn't answered it. A counter affidavit is due within 4 weeks, a rejoinder after that, and only then will the matter actually be heard on its merits. The disciplinary proceedings against the husband stay frozen in the meantime. But wherever this case lands, it's a useful reminder of something bigger. The POSH Act's power comes from its precision, from being a focused, purpose-built law for workplace sexual harassment. The moment it gets pulled into resolving disputes it was never built for, two things are put at risk at once: genuine complainants, whose cases can get harder to take seriously, and the credibility of the law itself. If you're responsible for running internal committees, or you want to actually understand where these lines sit, ILMS Academy's Train the Trainer POSH program is linked below, go check it out.